I'd like to kind of attach to what my brother was saying. In the sense that I'm one of the students who is under the tutelage of Professor Ogletree in the Criminal Justice Institute. But one of the issues that comes up for me listening here and every day at CJI is how do you arrive at your version of the truth? Did there come a time when you sat across the table from Michael Jackson and said, Mike, did you do it? Or did you look at the evidence in whole and come to a conclusion there? Which is, I mean, I'm not making a normative judgment either way, but it's a question also across the other side of the table at the prosecution, because as I watch at Roxbury, everything is so rushed, everything is so hurried, and the system's just chugging right along. How do you, as a prosecutor, arrive at the truth? Do you ask the victim broader questions besides what specifically happened at this moment, or do you really try to get a bigger picture and try to do justice with a broader sense of truth?
Okay. Mr. Cook?
Good evening, Mr. Mesereau and Dan and Ms. Coakley. I wanted to ask a question of Mr. Mesereau, and I also wanted to ask a question of Mr. Abrams. In the case of Michael Jackson, we realized that cameras were not allowed in the courtroom. In general, I'd like to know what your disposition is toward having a trial, especially high-profile trials of this nature, what your position or perspective is on cameras in the courtroom. The comments that you've made about the Michael Jackson case in respect to race are interesting, and I think that you have provided an apt and sophisticated perspective on how you handled the racial issues from that vantage point. But one of the concerns that I think a lot of black people have had, and certainly the thoughts that I've had in looking at the Michael Jackson phenomenon, is that Michael Jackson is an eccentric type of person, or he has characteristics or behavioral aspects of his personality that are apparently considered eccentric. And it seems to me that the media has highlighted those supposed eccentricities and made him look like a buffoon and a fool. And to me, there is a racial element there, because I think Michael Jackson is one of the very few high-profile black people that we've grown up with who is more or less an artistic eccentric. But on the other hand, there are many wealthy, artistic white people that are well known who are also eccentrics. And so I'd like you to comment a little bit about that aspect of it. I think the media has exploited this, and I think there is a racial element in the sense that his eccentricities are no more bizarre than that of many other white artistic personalities. Mr. Abrams, you have, in your defense of the criticisms of Mr. Mesereau of the performance of the media in the Michael Jackson case, have, sort of suggested that it was more balanced there than there was. And you pointed out that Geraldo Rivera, as an example, shows some balance. But I would really ask you if you could cite 3 or 4 other personalities that were out there in this case that appeared to defend the defense side of the case. And
that's balance, right? Just so we're clear, balance from your perspective is defending the defense case.
Balance in terms of the
is advocating Michael Jackson's position.
And secondly, in your personal opinion, were you unaware of information that would have had a more exculpatory impact in Michael's benefit, and some of the points that Mr. Mesereau mentioned about that. I would like some comments on those things.
Final question, then we're going to get one answer. I've got the 5 points. Here's the last one.
Okay. Actually, I just want to say that I'm not a law student. I'm just representing the Michael Jackson fan community online. And I was going to add to what he said about the race card being played. I think that we were really blessed to have the jury on our side. And I think even if you wanted to, you couldn't have played. I mean, if you did find that there was a component of race, I don't know how effective it would have been for you to actually go out and say that, because like he was saying, the media has propagated this image that Michael Jackson is not an African American, or he's disowned his race, and they've, just changed this whole vitiligo into this, skin bleaching thing. So even if you had gone out and said that there is a component of race, I don't think it would have been effective, because most people just, look at him and they say, oh, he's a white guy, he doesn't, own his race. So that's something I want you to react to. And
okay, we're going to have to stop there. We've got just a couple minutes for responses. The first question was about plea bargaining, whether or not it's good for the system. The other is the search for the truth from the prosecutor and the defense point of view. Cameras in the courtroom, and then the issue of race in the Michael Jackson case. You can pick your piece. Cameras in the courtroom, race in Michael Jackson.
I'll just quick, cameras in the courtroom, the concern about bias in the media, to me the answer is put a camera in there. If you want to watch it, the whole trial, you can watch it. You don't have to rely on me if you don't trust me or whoever else. I think that's the strongest argument for a camera in the courtroom. I think it was a good question you asked, actually, about Michael Jackson and his appearance. And is he... I do think that there's too much focus on his appearance in the media, but I don't think that the reason is because of race. I would argue that the reason is because he has changed before the eyes of the public, and as a result, I think he's getting a harder time than another person might, because people are seeing him, have seen how much different he looks. And again, whether it's based on disease or makeup or whatever the case may be, I think that's why he's getting teased, so to speak, and I think there's no other way to say it honestly than someone else might. And in response to the question about, do I think that people were being fair to Michael Jackson, again, you're talking to someone who came into this very dubious of this family, and I remain dubious of this family. I think that's exactly the kind of person that you want. I'm skeptical in general. I was skeptical of this story that this family was telling. I think what Tom said about the conspiracy charge was right on. It didn't make sense. I'd say it again and again. It doesn't make sense. I think that's fair. Look, if you think Michael Jackson's absolutely 100% innocent, and that if you accept everything Tom has said, that these were simply invented charges by a vindictive prosecutor, and that's your position, then you're not going to think that I was being objective. But I think that if you view it from a more balanced perspective, which is that these prosecutors came into it thinking that, and a grand jury found that there was enough evidence to send Michael Jackson to trial, but in the end, that's what a trial's for, and that the system worked in this case, I think it's a pretty balanced perspective on the case.
Tom?
Yeah, let me start with the issue of race. I recently addressed the annual convention of the National Bar Association in Los Angeles, and if any of you don't know what the National Bar Association is, that's an organization of lawyers that was formed in the 1920s when black lawyers could not get into the American Bar Association. They had a strict prohibition. Blacks were not allowed to join, and black lawyers formed the National Bar Association in response to that prohibition. And I gave my views on race in the Michael Jackson case. A law professor from Florida asked me a few questions. He had just published a book about race and the law, which I want to read as soon as I can. And he sort of was skeptical that did I really understand the deeper implications of race in this case. And I answered him this way. I said, look, I am convinced that the prosecutors were very, very attracted to the idea of convicting the world's greatest celebrity. I'm convinced they were far more attracted to that than destroying a black person. Okay, these are three white prosecutors, okay? However, Racism can exist on an unconscious or a subconscious level as well as a conscious level. And I said the following, I said, you know, you've got me thinking about this. I'm still convinced I'm correct that it was the celebrity part that was most attractive to them. It was the celebrity part that was going to get them significant advantages as the prosecutors who took down Michael Jackson, the world's greatest known entertainer. However, did the fact that Michael Jackson is black, that he is from a prominent black family, that he has black security people around him, factor into their feelings or belief, be it conscious or unconscious, that this would somehow help them disconnect him from this jury and this community and make him less valuable and easier to convict? Maybe. Maybe. I just don't think it was the primary motive. I just don't. But, you know, the fact that he was clearly going to arrive at court surrounded by black people, he was going to have black people in the courtroom, his family primarily supporting him, and the fact that you were not likely to get any blacks on the jury. In fact, there were two black women were possible jurors. They removed the two of them. I did raise a constitutional objection, which was denied. Did that play a part in their effort to figure out how convictable he was, how we could degrade and devalue him in the courtroom in some level? I think it could have. Because this was a very mean-spirited prosecution. They attacked everything about him, his sexuality, his finances, his music, his attire. They were willing to do anything. And I've got to tell you, I heard Dan, whose show I appeared on after the verdicts, and I appeared on not very many of them, but I did appear on his because he's always been very professional and honorable with me. But I heard him mention this idea of pornography. Well, he's correct. They found approximately 90 girly magazines in Michael Jackson's home. Playboy, Hustler, Penthouse. His fingerprints were on them. He had bought them. They never found any kiddie porn on computers or anywhere else. And I used that fact in my closing argument to explain why this guy is not a pedophile. So, a lot of things that the media picked up and gave you a surface impression about were not at all what they were made to seem.
Well, thank all of our presenters, Martha Coakley, Dan Abrams, and Tom Mesereau. Thank you for coming. Have a great evening.
We'll pick you up over there. Okay? Oh, okay. Is he going already? Everyone stop with him? Right, okay. Okay, great. All right, thank you.
To my friends and fans, thank you very much for all of your support. Together, we will see this through to the very end.